The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we are a horror franchise podcast discussing each film, popular and not so popular franchises. And today we're discussing Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. So we are firmly in franchise territory now.
Oh, yes.
Part 1, greatest horror film ever made. Its own thing, its own disgusting thing. Part 2, funny, weird, its own thing. Part 3, just kind of your rote slasher film with Leatherface and a whole new family shoehorned into it. So I don't know, man. I can't say that I enjoyed watching it a ton, but I was thinking about certain aspects in the last few days that I did come to like that we can get into. But yeah, first thoughts was, man, this is just like a capital M movie where the other two were not.
Yeah, well, this was specifically designed to be a franchise.
For sure.
New Line Cinema bought it, and they were riding high off of the Freddy movies. They had the Ninja Turtles going, so they're like, we like making franchises. So they kind of thought, well, we will make this with an idea that we can spin this off and make a whole bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
And they hired a guy, David Scow, who's a splatter
novelist, which I love.
Splatter punk. I always get that confused, but like whatever. But yeah, he wrote some real nasty short story horror stuff, and in fact wrote a version of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 that they kind of liked. They hired him to do this, wanting it to be mean and gritty, and then when it was mean and gritty, they were like, "Oh no, we didn't think you'd actually go through with it." Yeah, and so they ended up having to cut a ton of stuff. And then they went, we'll get to it there, but they went behind Jeff Burr, the director, went behind his back to make a whole new ending for it. He was, Jeff Burr, you might remember, was the director of Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings.
Yeah. And he did this before Pumpkinhead 2 because he was riding high on Stepfather 2.
That's right.
Make room for Daddy. Make room for Daddy.
I have not seen, I think I've seen Stepfather 3.
Oh, well,
Stepfather
let's look forward to this, later on. But yeah, he was the director of Stepfather 2, which was somehow like, I'm not going to say a hit, but well regarded. So you bring him on for this. And then later on he does Pumpkinhead 2 and he does Puppet Master 4 and 5. I
think 4 and 5.
And he's still working. He's still doing direct to video.
Well, he died,
stuff.
So he's not.
Okay.
That kind of put a stop to his career. But other than that,
I don't know, man. It's a horror genre. I mean, I remember looking him up and just thinking like, he still did a lot of stuff after this.
Oh yeah, no, he's a working director, and it's nice to know because this is the second one. When he did Pumpkinhead 2, he was brought into last minute. Yeah, he had to cover a bunch of stuff. In this one, gets screwed constantly. Like he kind of got brought in. They shot this trailer. This is another movie like Friday the 13th Part 7, or I'm sorry, Jason Takes Manhattan, where the trailer is amazing and the movie does not live up to it. In this case, they shot this trailer ahead of time where it's this almost Excalibur-like, the saw is the lady in the lake hands the saw to this guy. Leatherface in this one is played by Kane Hodder. Yeah. So you got a little crossover there. And they made this great ad. And I remember seeing it as a kid and being kind of taken with it, but at the same time being very afraid because, like, you can make that scary.
Yeah. And I liked Excalibur as a kid. But, oh, and if you're interested in the trailer itself, Fangoria has a great whole primary article dedicated to that probably like 9 months ago or so. Like it's on the cover. Like, I think Phil Noble was just like, I want to get to the bottom of this trailer. So there's a whole thing about just the trailer. So check out that edition of Fangoria.
They got him to direct they were considering Peter Jackson seriously. And this was before Peter Jackson was Peter Jackson. So this isn't one of those like, we were considering Federico Fellini. This was an actual legitimate thing, but they went with Jeff Burr. Like you said, they were stoked about Stepfather 2. Yeah. And they rode his ass throughout this entire project. As much as we talked a little bit in the last episode about how bad Cannon was, like Tobe Hooper, like they were really looking over his shoulder, but they were really, really coming down on Jeff Burr for this, to a point where towards the end of this shoot, they were on like week 5 of 6 shooting, and they're like, we need to see your shot list for next week. And it's like, what are you I'm trying to do this week. What are you talking about? Like, we need to see your shot list or you're fired. They ended up firing him at one point, and then like they fired him on a Friday and then like rehired him on a Sunday. It just sounds like a really awful work environment.
Can you imagine just like you fire your director and then you go out to other directors? Now, granted, like jumping in, hey, you got to start on Monday. It's Friday night. Everybody has to kind of know what a shit show the production is. And so no other director is going to be like, yeah, I can really turn this around and bring this in on time and under budget and all that kind of thing. So like who these producers, I really want to know even the more minutia around that, because just being a Lord of the Rings fan, I recognize one guy in some of the behind the scenes stuff. Mike DeLuca was a producer at New Line, and he was one of the producers on Lord of the Rings. And I know they rode Peter Jackson pretty hard at times. And I wonder if he was like kind of the through line for that and what they actually did to him.
Well, they, I mean, like Michael DeLuca was a big champion of horror, I guess.
He was,
yeah. And then like, so when Jeff Burr in one of the behind the scenes featurettes of this was talking about how like, the mistake he made is thinking that he was making his own movie and that he wasn't. He was making their movie.
Yeah.
And so they were just
the Marvel formula.
Really wanting to really like watching costs and all that stuff. There was like no way you can have overages, anything like that. It was really ridiculous to the detriment. Because then on top of like them, I guess it was like the second in command. They never like dropped the name of who's in both like in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre companion that I read, and then in the behind the scenes stuff, they never mentioned the person's name, but they're always like the second in command. Some second in command at New Line was like, I hate this. It just like wasn't for him, and wanted all these changes and stuff. It's a weird thing because you can't expect every movie, particularly if you're the head of a company, you can't expect every movie that's made like to be tailored to you specifically.
For you. Yeah.
You know, like I can't imagine, you know, if someone shows me a crappy romantic comedy, you know, it's not for me, but you know, I can watch it and tell you like what works, what doesn't, but just be like, no, there's too much kissing in this, you know,
too much
like,
longing in the third act.
There's too much joy. Tamp that down. And so it's unfortunate because I do think there's some good stuff here. And then the MPAA was really coming down on, much like they did eventually with the Friday the 13th, they were coming down on New Line because of the Freddy movies.
Yep.
And particularly like this, you know, Texas Chainsaw had such a reputation. The last one was, you know, part 2 was released unrated. So they're really looking at this one. They sent it back 11 times with cuts, like frames, whole things cut out, whatever. So all these gags got left on the cutting room floor. They did eventually finally release a Blu-ray that has like the full uncut thing on there, but I don't think that could save this movie. I think there's just some fundamental issues I have with this movie that like more gore, like, yeah, sure, that's fine. But it's still just the choices that were made kind of baffle me. And I don't think are often for the best, despite Viggo Mortensen.
Well, I think one of the choices that was made that is so hard to get around is just from the jump, that opening crawl just makes it sound like part 2 didn't happen. And so we're just like working with a continuity that is strange, that I don't completely understand. Like Sally died in a psych ward in 1977, I believe they said.
Like not too much, or it was 1981 or something like that.
1981, like, yeah. And
well, because like that she died in a psych ward, and then they arrested one guy from the Sawyer family, W.E. Sawyer, which is actually a reference to the first one, in that there's like a sign at one point you can see where it's that they were the Slaughters in the first one, and it was W.E. Slaughter. We Slaughter.
Gotcha. We Slaughter. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was imagining the whole time that it was Grandpa, that they just had Grandpa up on the stand.
Sure. he's going down for the family.
Yeah.
Finally.
But then like, Leatherface didn't exist. No one knows where he is. And yeah, they cut out 2, which makes the appearance of Stretch in this one very strange.
Yes.
And it took me a while to figure out. There's several times in this movie where I had to rewind because I couldn't figure out what was going on in a way that's, I'm not that stupid. It's the fault of the filmmakers. But like there's a part where the instigating factor for all this, or part of what's happening, is they've uncovered this corpse pit of like 40 or 50 bodies.
Yeah.
And our protagonists drive through it.
Which then the media reports immediately as 60 to 70, which I thought was funny.
Yes. But there's one part where the camera like lingers on this reporter walking up, taking a drag of a cigarette, standing there, and then walking through. And I was like, why did you do that? And it took 2 or 3 viewings until I figured out, that's Caroline Williams.
Yes.
That's Stretch. So is it just hey, look, we have a cameo, or is that supposed to be Stretch in her new role as a reporter?
Sure.
Like, or is this like, this is what would have happened to Stretch if they didn't go bother her, they didn't torment her.
Yeah. And I think this is one of those things that is so easily hand waved when you're trying to work on continuity, which is, well, she didn't even exist in this timeline, but this is for the fans. And then also the director said something to the point, well, Stretch is, she's been pursuing the family for years at this point, and she's a journalist now. And I'm like, well, which one is it? Right. Did she not exist, or is it this one, or do we not care?
And maybe there's a commentary track that answers this, but was that opening crawl always in there? Because the writer David Scow wanted to make, as he put it, like not a Xerox, but something that nods to the original. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly a lot of stuff in there, like it opens with people driving down the road, these little set pieces and moments that kind of reference the first film in a rather smart way a lot of the time. If you're just looking at it from that angle, but other stuff just absolutely doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a whole new family. Like, shall we just dive into the whole new family somehow? So, because this is just groundwork, even though you don't see the rest of the family for a while, it just still says, like, what were you starting with here? Like, is this a reboot? I don't know what we're going for here.
Well, he liked the idea. Scow liked the idea of a sort of a found family rather than the family. That is this group of misfits getting together. Mm-hmm. On some level, I get it, because the second one, in theory, they've all been blown up. That was not, as we talked about in the last one, not firmly established, but how many times are you going to have these same people show back up? Mm-hmm. Kind of get that. You want to breathe some life into it, make it your own thing. But when you have this family of misfits, this found family that operates like the family, what did you just do? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You just made it like, now we have long lost cousin Eddie showing up or whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of the same thing, but with different faces. And in some ways that doesn't really work as well. Yeah. Because I think like the fact in the first one that it was a family made it more like isolated and strange. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the second one is just goofier, but this one, because it's like they're also quote unquote regular people, I had a hard time with that. But then they go do this stuff. And I know that's kind of an underlying thing for a lot of this is, it's all sort of the Ed Gein story of just, he was just a guy, but then at home he was doing all this terrible stuff. But it's like you get a bunch of people together and they just agree that this is fine.
This is what they do.
Like whatever. Yeah. So some of that stuff really didn't work for me at all. But it was nice to see Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah. I mean, so we've got the new family is Tex, Viggo Mortensen, Alfredo, Tinker, the little girl, Mama, I guess granddad, sort of. And then Leatherface, aka Junior. So those are our new people, and obviously, like, I guess if it's found family, it's these people are not related to the Sawyers. Yeah, but they still say at one point the Saw is family, and they still have Grandpa.
They still, or is that a whole new grandpa? Is someone else just have an old corpse just lying around?
Is this what you do in Texas?
I guess.
I don't know. An old grandpa who is like 130 years old now at this point, and
if he's even still alive. In this one, it's really hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. Like they don't even. I don't think he moves the entire time, right? But they still feed him a little bit of blood, I believe.
Well, and they make it sound like that Mama is his wife.
Oh.
I think. Well, I mean, I'm just going off of that because she refers to him as Papa at one point. So I'm assuming.
I see what you're saying.
When she's talking about how she removed her lady parts, she's like,
"Cut my own out years back. I did. Took care of Papa's too."
And the way that cut is timed is very much a punchline. Like, it's very much just cutting to him going like, "Yeah, thanks."
So, I mean, it's kind of like how Mike Pence and his wife refer to each other, like mother and father. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. So Viggo is Tex. I mean, I love Viggo Mortensen, and I was really happy to see him in this. And man, he is way too pretty to be in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Yeah,
there is a couple of times when we first see him at the gas station, where it's just the lighting on him or like the faces he's making. It's like you could adjust his facial sliders just a little bit and end up with Klaus Kinski. Like, it's not that different. I think maybe the blonde hair. I don't know, but there's just some faces he makes. I'm like, that is you could just kind of bump those cheeks out a little bit and you're Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, he's just way too attractive. He just looks like a hipster cowboy guy hanging out.
And I like, they don't really go into it, but I like that he takes that element of Leatherface's in like the definitely in the first one, the more sort of gender bending element of Leatherface, because you see his nails are painted a little bit later. He wears an apron at one point, and that like call me Tex just seems like this put on of trying to be butch.
She looks to me like she might go all screamy on us, Eddie.
I wish you'd call me Tex. I told you.
I really liked that little bit where it reminded me also of Boogie Nights where he says, can you call me Dirk Diggler? It's like somebody who's trying to take on a role in that moment. And so maybe he was not really into the idea of all this killing, but Tex is into killing, so he's coming around to it.
Well, that's something that, going back to the family thing, is that they all got along way too well. And I think that was something that was kind of scary about the first one, too, is that like they're just these awful animals that hate each other, but like are bound together by this.
Not enough hooting and hollering.
Yeah, this is just like, when he's like, call me Tex. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Right. Hey.
Yeah.
Which could be, you could do that. Particularly now, you could do a very, an awful version of that kind of corporate speak that, we hear you and we're listening. Oh,
sure.
Whatever, but masking just the worst stuff ever.
Your coworkers are your family.
Right. But they don't really, it doesn't read like that in this.
But no, I love watching Viggo. I love his whole, at the beginning, he does like show the map to the couple and he refers to the new road coming through, which again is a little bit of the new world encroaching on the old world. He does, I think he mentions like losing his job at the slaughterhouse.
I think maybe the guy at the gas station.
The other guy, right. Alfredo.
Alfredo.
There is still a little bit of that. Well, and obviously Alfredo does the Polaroids and tries to charge the money.
Get it. Get you good. $5. It's only $5. Good picture. What do you think? $3.69. Okay, just for you. $3.69. Give it.
So we've got the new world and the old world, which is an important Texas Chainsaw thing going on. I don't know. I'm a sucker for Viggo, and I enjoyed watching him in this, even though he at times he stole the show. Like at times, like during a couple of the kill scenes, I don't think he's super proud of this movie, but maybe he just needed a gig.
It's not like he doesn't try. It's not like he phones it in. I think he does. He does really, really go for it here.
Hey, if you need anything, just twitch.
Man, just like a decade before Aragorn. It's just amazing. I
think about some our ostensible like heroes in this. Michelle, played by Kate Hodge, and Ryan, played by William Butler, who has been killed by Leatherface, Freddy, and Jason. I don't know which Freddy he's in, which Nightmare on Elm Street he's in. I haven't seen a lot of those, but in Jason, he's in Part 7, A New Blood. They're all partying for his birthday, and he's the one that doesn't make it. He's on his way there, and Jason stops and kills him and his girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
And the little girl from the family is also Part 7 alum. She was young Lamar Park.
Right.
Lar Park.
It's funny because there's not a lot of actors that can share that crown. Because what do they say? Bill Paxton was killed by an alien, a predator, and a Terminator. Yeah. So this guy gets the other three of these.
Does Lance Henriksen fall into that too?
Lance Henriksen would be an alien. He gets ripped in half.
Yeah, and Terminator in the first one, he's in the police station.
Is he in the? Okay, yeah, right.
But then I don't
think he's a predator. No.
Unless it was like maybe in the AVPs. I haven't seen those, but I don't know.
Oh, he does show up in one of the AVPs as the creator of Bishop, I think.
Yeah, but he's also William Butler, also a director as well.
Yeah, he does. So. Maybe that's who I was thinking of. He does a ton of direct to video horror movies. So can't say I've seen very many of them, but always a fan of that.
You haven't seen Demonic Toys Jack Attack?
Well,
not yet.
I mean, there are a lot of Demonic Toys movies that we may have to get to.
Yep. Like Baby Oopsie 2, Murder Dolls.
Not doing that one. Sorry. I draw the line at
obviously,
Baby
obviously
Oopsie.
we watched Baby Oopsie first. Like, we're not going to put you into part 2.
That was my problem. I just didn't want to jump into part 2 right away.
Baby Oopsie, the feature.
All right. I think he also directed a Reanimator film.
He did the Reanimator Miskatonic U.
Okay, so I haven't seen that.
And Beyond the it's Beyond the Resonator. And,
I saw that one.
Oh, no, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. It was the Resonator Miskatonic U. He did Curse of the Reanimator.
Right. So I think it's only like 47 minutes long or something like that too.
Yeah.
So when we get to Reanimator, we'll have to remember to go into that realm instead of just the primary 3. Anyway, where were we? We were at
talking about Viggo
and the family.
Road.
And so, okay, so let's go to Alfredo. So he's our hitchhiker. He's our wacky guy. He's taking the Polaroids and all that kind of stuff. He peeps on the girl early on. Here's my problem with this movie. Beyond just the confusing family stuff, there's entirely too much time spent in that forest at the beginning.
Yes.
An interminable amount of time running around in the woods in blue light. And so I kind of forget what everybody kind of does in all that. I sort of felt like I came up for air when we finally got to the house 45 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, because it's a little strange because they meet these goofballs at the gas station. Yeah, they actually, one of the scenes they had to cut was before the peeping scene, which is really just a lift from Psycho, like it's shot very similar. Yeah. But he picks up a Bible and holds it and like talks about what you won't be saved, and then goes and peeps. And I guess the censors were like, you can't do that.
Seems so tame.
There's an altercation after Alfredo is caught peeping. He then attacks them with a gun.
Bible, you really, goddammit! You too good for me, huh? You too good for me? Come on, get the hell out of here! I'll take care of here. Take you down right here, cowboy.
Tex is like, "Hey, no, get out of here. Go down the road. Escape." And then Alfredo shoots Tex as they're driving away. They're in the panic. The boyfriend Ryan is like, just take the Cowboys road, turn. So he starts heading down that way. This was the other part I had to rewind a few times because I was confused by. So they're driving in this road that the cowboy Tex has sent them down, and they're attacked by Leatherface in a truck. I don't think Leatherface should be driving, but
I said the same thing. It just makes me always think of that shot of the werewolf in the Mystery Science Theater. The werewolf driving. Whenever I see, like, they imply that Michael Myers drives sometimes, that feels weird to me.
See, Michael Myers driving to me makes more sense. Like Leatherface, it seems like he's really not functional in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And so I just, worry about him behind the wheel, I guess. But he's on the back roads. It's fine.
Same time, I don't like watching Kermit the Frog on a bike either. I just don't like watching those legs. So,
what would be funny is he actually, they don't trust him driving, so he has to sit on Grandpa's lap. So he takes Grandpa and sits on him in the car. Right. They actually have a divot dug out in the seat for Grandpa's bike to fit into, so they don't mess him up.
Well, I know in the Midwest, when you at least got your driver's permit, you had to have an adult in the...
You had to sit on an adult's lap. Yeah. It made my teen years very uncomfortable.
Right. First dates, rough.
Really weird. But he bumps them, causes them to stop a little bit, and then he tries to attack them with the saw, ends up pulling the trunk off their car, and they're able to get away. As they're driving away, cut to Ken Foree.
Yay.
Horror classic Ken Foree, great guy. Driving the other way, bopping along to some tunes, and then just the cuts here are so strange because they're driving towards each other. You can kind of tell that, but then a figure comes out of the brush and it's Tex.
Yeah.
But for a second, I thought it was Ryan.
Oh,
because they kind of look the same. Just blonde, blue shirt, kind of tousled hair. And you just see it for just a split second. So you can't really register who it is. And he looks dead. So I'm like, wait, Ryan's not dead. What's going on? And then that causes Ken Foree, Benny, to flip his Jeep. And then they get into it they get into an accident as well. Example, swerve into each other. And then we get a whole bunch of wood time.
Yeah.
Where they're just hanging out in the woods, recovering from their accident.
Yelling at each other. I mean, the one good bit that I liked in the wood time was the woman that comes running up screaming, because I was like, oh, she's a final girl from another movie, it seems like. Mm-hmm. And so our protagonists are going to come across her now. She is, I believe, the sister of the person that we saw get murdered in the opening credits sequence.
I believe so. Yeah, like she got away too, or yeah. Which that I love the opening credits is Leatherface sewing a new face,
right?
And they did that with Baloney, which I think is hilarious.
Oh, that's great. It's very clear also that they're trying to mimic Freddy because that's how the opening of Nightmare on Elm Street is, just creating the claw.
Oh, he's building the claws, right?
Yeah. So each of these guys are in their workshops here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I kind of like the idea of our protagonist stumbling upon like another final girl from like another version of this movie. Could be happening over here.
Sure.
Though she is pretty quickly dispatched, which is fine. I don't need to hear her screaming for the rest of the movie. But yeah, Leatherface takes her out pretty quickly.
And that was another effect that was cut. Because initially it was supposed to be Leatherface like saws through her through the tree.
Yeah.
Instead, you just get like a close up of her face, and then like Leatherface going and stabbing forward with the saw.
Cutaway kills. It's what we love in horror movies.
They're not. I mean, they're not always bad, but in this one, they're not very good.
Yeah. So speaking of earlier, this couple doesn't do a lot for me either.
They really don't. I mean, like they're we've talked in particularly in part one about these being sort of thinly drawn characters, but like. There's very little to these people, and they're not that interesting. What you do know about them,
sure, yeah.
Because I think some of it's because they're like their relationship is established that this is the end for them. Mm-hmm. They're driving eventually to Florida. They're on their way to Florida, where she's going to get on a plane and go to New York, and then go to London, and he's not. He's going to be in pre-med or something.
It's not a bad jumping off point for a couple in a horror movie. I think that could be kind of good.
But they just didn't really establish that relationship well enough, or them as like individual characters well enough. Because I don't really care. Yeah, and they're not bad. Kate Hodges is perfectly fine, but it's just not. I just didn't give too much shits about it.
Yeah, so everybody runs around the woods for a while. Oh, we are introduced to Tinker, who is played by Joe Unger, who I immediately just recognized from Roadhouse. He is one of the goon/bar people. In that classic, will tell you personally, John, that last night I read another couple of pages of the book that you gifted me a couple of years ago, Pain Don't Hurt. I've been slowly going through that over the years. It's been by my bed for the last couple of years. Did I read a couple of essays about Roadhouse?
Yeah, it's a lot to be learned from that.
So anyway, yes, I was happy to see Joe Unger in there.
Yeah, he's also a Jeff Burr regular. He appears in Pumpkinhead 2 as well as our Leatherface this time around, R.A. Mihailov, who's a biker that is playing Leatherface. Although Kane Hodder did hang around and do stunt coordination.
Right? Yeah. But Tinker's good. What?
You know who was initially they asked to direct this? The director of Theodore Rex, Jonathan Betul. I don't know how to say his name, but he dropped out at the last minute, and that's why they got Jeff Burr.
I would have lobbied for the Saw family to have the guy in the bag. He would have just fit in so well.
The guy from the bag would just have crushed it.
Watch Theodore Rex, everybody.
Watch or that not, scene or don't. From Theodore Rex.
Yeah, just look up YouTube, the guy in the bag. Anyway, we get another Saw family character here, and there's not a whole lot to him, really. He's got kind of a hook hand thing going. He spreads out flares and gets into an altercation with Benny.
Yeah, well, Tink, he's their tech guy. He's their he has several speeches about technology being the way of the future, whatever. And this we're first sort of introduced to him when they drive away later and after, I think it's before Leatherface attacks them, but it cuts back to the gas station. Alfredo's still wandering outside, just grumbling to himself. And then a truck pulls out from like the bay, the garage. Yeah. And you hear Alfredo go like, the trap is sprung now. And this already, I was kind of not thrilled by this because I figured the cowboy, sending him down this road that was like, okay, we're sending him to the thing. But generally, the Sawyers aren't big on plans or traps. I mean, I know there was, the trap door in the second one, but it just happens. People just stumble onto these idiots. Their grandest plan was they found out Stretch was playing something. Their big plan was let's go harass a woman at work. Yeah, and that's not some Machiavellian masterstroke. That's just ask any Hooters waitress. Like it's just a thing that happens. And so it's the idea that they're like doing this big oh, we'll trap them and all this stuff. For what?
Right. And
why?
I mean, and they don't even have the means of like getting fresh meat for the chili as in part 2. But it does remind me of, I can't remember who wrote the article that you quoted after we watched the Netflix Texas Chainsaw, but it was like, this is what happens when you turn over the wrong rock in the desert. And nobody's turning over a rock right here. This is more of a planned out type of thing. And I just, because like you could have just killed them at the gas station. Yeah. Like, why go through any of this? It doesn't really make much sense to me. Right. Everybody messes around in the woods for a long time. And then we finally get to the house. And that's when I started paying attention a little bit more. Not that I was drifting too bad during the woods, but I don't know. A little bit of a letdown running through the woods. Well, it's just Ken Faree just like patching them up. Oh, well, and then when Tinker, because he sets up all these flares. Yeah. And then Benny's like, will you help me set my, get my Jeep right set up? He's like, yeah, sure. And then Benny starts to think something's wrong. So he goes back and starts to his car and starts putting together a gun, like an AK-47 or whatever, while Tank eventually like revs the engine and just goes and runs into him, which the lesson there is always drive with a loaded gun. Of course. Yes. Yeah. In Texas. 10 and 2. And just one of those hands is holding a gun. But once they got back to the house, I was just like, okay, finally we'll have like a little bit more of a family dynamic thing going here. We get the little girl.
Why are you doing this?
Because if you don't poke them, then they don't leave. And if they don't leave, we can't feed Grandpa.
She's fine. Creepy little kids don't do it for me at all. Like, I just find them kind of boring and not creepy. I liked her little doll. Yeah, she's really shoehorned in here. It's like not in a way that's natural. It's just all of a sudden there's a little blonde girl going wah ah ah. Yeah. Okay. She might be Leatherface's daughter, I guess. Well, I think that's what they were trying to imply, but luckily they didn't go too far with that because I really don't want to know much more about that story. I don't know. It just felt very forced. I think the only reason that she exists is just the idea of a family. Mm-hmm. Like, let's tick off the boxes of who could be in this family. Like, oh, a kid could be there. But I do remember thinking, like, when Michelle stumbles into her room before she's taken captive by Viggo reappearing, there's all these bones around everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't have the same oomph to it that the others did. There was something about it that just looked like someone just scattered a bunch of like plastic bones into a room. It didn't have the sinister quality that the first and the second one did. Because it doesn't make any sense, like, why it would be like that. Like the first, again, like the first one conjures up this evil of this family. Like it presents this strange insular family that's doing this shit. And it seems like, the house is kind of falling apart from the inside or whatever. And they're just kind of mirroring that themselves. Whereas this is like, no, it's just this nice home. But then we also just have bones everywhere. And it's like, it just, again, it just feels forced. It just feels like you like, wouldn't this be cool? And you just do it in a way that doesn't fit anything. It's wouldn't this be cool? But it's missing that last like touch to make it actually creepy. Yeah. There's something about it that doesn't work. I mean, because there was no one in like the Ed Gein case, which is, so much of this is based on, there was no one living with Ed to go like, dude, wash your brain bowls. Like, don't leave the sink piled up. Like, because he was just an insane person living alone. The idea that there's multiple people living in a house, they're just like, no, all of this is fine. Just really stretches credulity. So little girl is fine. Gosh, who's less? I mean, I guess it's Mama's Leather. Fine. Mama's fine. I like her little vocal thing. Mm-hmm. Little stoma robot voice.
Ruckus, my nap is just a goner. Certainly hope you children are pleased with yourselves.
Yeah, she doesn't do a whole lot. No. But of course, I was just like, well, again, this is a whole other family. So she is not related to the originals at all. I just have to sort of like take this on its own. But yeah, she was fine. Well, there's no, I think that's something that's missing again with this family dynamic is that there is no like patriarch or matriarch like at the head. Like they all kind of defer to her a little bit, but there's no real threat of violence or anything like it doesn't really make sense why they're all paying attention to her. Like who? It's not like when the cook would like flip out. Yeah. And be like, where's this sort of established hierarchy going on where this is just, they're nice to her. Yeah. So we got Leatherface. He gets himself a brand new saw in this pretty cool looking gold and silver. It says the Saw is family on the side. It's gigantic.
I think it was like 70 pounds or something like that. It was huge. And
it's incredible.
It is funny, like for the last 2 movies, how much they've increasingly fetishized the Saw.
Oh, yeah.
For the second one, it's absolutely stands in as a phallus. Like, no, the metaphor is paper thin there.
Ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
But
this one is just like, yeah, but what if the Saw was cool looking? It's like, oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool looking.
It's cool looking, yeah. It's just they don't do much with it.
Yeah. But what did you think of him playing with the speak and spell or whatever that was?
So this is a thing that Tink has built for him for
there is
learning.
one aspect that I did like about it.
I did, yeah. Well, it operates like a speak and spell, and it shows like a picture of a clown.
What is it?
Try again, and he gets mad and does it again. But then when it cuts back and he's still doing it, that's when it got me. The fact
that was good.
That he's still just like he can't put it together. That there's no punishment for it. There's not
food.
Like you lose. It's just no, keep trying till you get it right.
Right.
But it's also you wouldn't want to eat a clown. They taste funny.
They taste funny. Yes, there you go.
Got that joke from Bicentennial Man.
But I liked him. He didn't move as wacky as he did in part 2.
No. Yeah.
Like he didn't do that like dance in place
it's not
thing.
like frantic.
I guess I liked his long metal hair, but it was fine. Like there was a couple of parts of his mask that I did like when he does like the close-ups, like when he's trying to intimidate Michelle.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of nasty, and like his teeth look good.
It looks scary and nasty, but just I don't know, having him like interact with people in a regular way,
right,
just doesn't really work for me. Like doesn't work for that character. Like in the first one when he's wearing the masks, it's fake. Like he's playing at this stuff because there's not really anything under there. But this just makes it seem like no, he's got some problems, but he's a guy, But
he's alone most of the time in the first movie too.
In fact, there's a line about you're not supposed to leave your brother alone in the first one. But
right.
This one, it's like, nah, he's fine. He can be around children and he's just fine. And it's normal. I think that's also like, I think it's supposed to be him from the first one because that's why he's in the leg brace. It's probably because he cut his leg.
Because the saw falls.
So he can't run as fast. Oh no, like that's not scary. Like he's infirmed, and if it was like he had like an exoskeleton that helped him saw better or something, but I don't know.
All right, basket case.
Yeah. Yeah, if he was in the basket case suit, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I liked him just fine. Obviously nothing I'll ever take away from the first film's performance, and they went to Gunnar again and they just couldn't settle on a cost. And I don't know. I respect Gunnar for just being like, look, dude, I'm a working actor. You can't keep putting me through this for like no money. Yeah. So yeah, good for him.
No, and Mihailov is totally fine. No, it's nothing.
Yeah, I liked him.
Nothing I could point to that's like, oh, that he sucked at that. No, he does what needed to do.
This did have in this kitchen, there was a good kill that did get pretty butchered by the MPAA, which was Ryan being hung upside down, and there's supposed to be a giant swinging sledgehammer that comes in and bangs him in the head, which does. But originally in the filming, it was just explicitly shown that the little girl does it. And there's so many fast cuts to try to get around the idea that she didn't do it, but it just looks awkward and weird.
Yes.
Because the MPAA didn't like it, but she's still clearly pulling the string. Yeah.
It's all set up, but it's like the fact that you don't see it directly, that it's cut to a different angle.
Yes.
Is supposed to make it okay. And then when the hammer comes down to hit Ryan in the head, it doesn't even show it. You hear a sound, but cuts to her, to Michelle screaming, but she was screaming anyway. So it doesn't flow well together. Like they just butchered this thing.
Yeah. That's kind of the main kill in this set piece here. Everybody else is just kind of getting run around chased, but like they kind of try to do a dinner scene, but not really. Luckily.
Yes.
They do nail her hands to the chair. And I did like when Viggo said, "How do you like Texas?" Right there. But there's no protracted dinner scene, which I was glad about. Ryan was the big kill, and then Benny shows up.
Yeah.
I was initially happy to see him show up with a machine gun, but then I was just kind of like, well, this is just a little too easy. He just shows up and blows away the house.
Right.
That's kind of boring, really. And she escapes. Michelle escapes somehow.
Yeah. She pulls the nails out of herself.
Pulls the nails out? Yuck.
But it's just when you have a gun, it's boring because he just lays waste to everybody. And it's like, you're getting some blood, but
even shoots Grandpa in the face.
Yeah. Grandpa just gets obliterated, which is fine.
Yeah.
You don't see a little girl get obliterated. Yeah. Basically everyone else is dead. And, but then Tex comes out and he and Benny fight. Tex ends up getting set on fire, covered in gas and set on fire. And they were supposed to like kind of survive that. And they were supposed to have another altercation in the woods. And then Tex gets caught by one of their traps, but they had to cut that for MPAA stuff, but fine, whatever. So Tex is taken care of. But then as they try to escape, Leatherface is on them. Benny and Leatherface have a huge struggle in some water, and he saws Benny's head. Like the saw goes into his head, and the saw is in his head. And I'm really emphasizing that he has been sawed in the head by a chainsaw, a giant chainsaw in the head.
In the head. No cutaways. Great little effect. By the way, I haven't mentioned at this point, K&B does all the effects. This K&B, the famous production house, is Evil Dead 2, Wishmaster, and all this stuff. Great. When the effects are there, they're great. Benny, having been sawed in the head, disappears under the water. Leatherface is still on Michelle, and he's like clawing at her. She's getting out of the water, and she just bashes his head in with a rock. No, I like that. Like, didn't even do she uses his tools against him or something. She used the weapon.
She just bashes him with a rock. And so, dispatched. Hooray. And initially the ending was that she comes out and it's morning time. She's kind of, oh my God, I made it. But then she sees like a police cruiser and the little girl is in the back of the police cruiser. Like, there's more of us. Right. This doesn't just end here that, maybe I'm in with the local buzz too. The test screenings they did, the crowds really liked Benny, really liked Ken Furry.
Shocking.
Yeah. Shocking that you would like
one
Ken
of the
Furry.
greatest, most charismatic, horror actors of the time.
So weird. But so New Line went, aha, well, we need to set up for more franchise stuff, even though this absolutely just did that. But we want Benny back. So the ending has been changed. This is what they shot without Jeff Burr. Just did not even involve him at all.
So shitty.
Which is, unbelievably crappy. Alfredo's still alive. Alfredo's back and is threatening Michelle. Then Benny saves the day. Benny, who has been sawed in the head by a giant chainsaw.
In the head.
He's just got a little wound in there, something like that. I was so waiting for him to turn around and it's like his head is missing. Like in the first Omen or something like that. Like there's just a huge chunk and he's just like, this is the last little bit he did, Or
one of those dumb things from the mid 2000s, Final Destination type thing where somebody gets sliced in half and doesn't realize it at first. And it took him hours to realize it. And then his head slides off.
Yeah, they go over a bump and he's like, oh, that's right. And the top of his head just slides off. That would be great.
Yes. But no, Benny's alive and fine.
Yeah, but he's fine. And so then they drive away together and you see Leatherface and his brace step in to frame. And it's like, oh, you won't be scared if we put Leatherface in orthopedic shoes. Like, why did you do that?
Right.
And so that's this one.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more torn on it in the fact that this movie's a mess.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're just going to say hey, that guy that we chainsawed in the face, he's actually still alive.
Yeah.
That is a mess.
Yeah. What do you do? How do you go no, that's fine. Right. Let's spend a bunch of money to shoot that, to have him be back alive, even though that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
How little do you think of the American public?
I love that you made it national.
Yeah, I guess I should have been movie going public, but I've got an American flag wrapped around me right now, as I usually do when 6 o'clock hits. So.
Tomorrow night, Biden's going to make sure he says that and bring up this film in the debate. How little do you think of the American public?
It turns out
Benny back to
that's
life.
who actually directed the new ending was Donald Trump. Sorry to get political, but it's true.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a handful of things in this that I do like, and it was interesting to see. I'm not saying good, but it was interesting to see the Leatherface and the Saw people in a more traditional franchise type thing. Now, I bet you anything, I'm not going to like that moving forward.
Sure.
But it's just what if we put him in a franchise? fine. Now I don't know what to do with them.
Right.
Because we've had 3 wildly different movies at this point now. And again, I don't see how you could remake number 1 we do.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was something interesting to me about just watching, like, what would you do in a traditional slasher? I was bored to tears by the woods.
Yeah.
But I kind of like some of the house stuff.
Which is funny because they when they were shooting, the place they were shooting at was really close to Six Flags in Valencia, California. And in the VHS, I guess, they quote unquote fixed this, but I kind of wish they left it in. In some scenes, you could hear people screaming on the roller coaster, which is so great.
I still could love that for so many reasons.
Yeah.
One, of all the sounds that you could have in a horror movie in the background, it's people screaming. Yeah. That's pretty great. B, could you imagine being the sound? Okay, so the sound person always gets the rough end of the stick on production because everybody's just like, it's fine. Like, it'll be fine. The sound person is always like, no, you guys, like, we have to be careful about this.
Well, see, it's a 2-pronged thing because on one hand, you do have, the sound guys get jerked around. The last thing anyone cares about, but they're also the most insane people. They're also the people that are like, oh, your stereo settings aren't right. And the mids are too whatever. And you're like, I don't care, man. I'm just trying to listen to Smash Mouth. Like everyone does.
Yes.
But it is. So it's that's like you're hyper fixated on this thing that no one cares about. And you can't. So you have to deal with those two things. But to be like, I picked up the roller coaster. Too bad. New Line says we got to go.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they were also they were shooting this old TV show China Beach at the time, which took place during the Vietnam War. And so they would be like, there'd be Hueys going overhead and stuff like that. But most of their shots were at night. And there was also a big fire in Valencia around that time. But because they're shooting at night, they just didn't they didn't light the burnt areas.
Right. I love that. Well, and also worth noting, first Texas Chainsaw to be shot in California.
In California. Yeah.
We took it out of Texas.
Which, I mean, fine, I guess. Like, it's just in the woods, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. And a house.
House. But a lot of that was practical because didn't have time to build sets. Some of them, like the sets were already built. There's a lot of like putting the cart before the horse in this, where they had like some sets built before they even had a director or, the stuff was really planned out. And so Jeff Burr was pretty hamstrung going into some of this, and like shooting at night during when nights are the shortest. That was kind of tough.
Oh, sure.
So you had less time. But
man,
so he really I don't want to come down on like Jeff Burr for this because he was like up against a lot. And I think there are some like issues with, ultimately it does come down to the director where it's like issues with pacing and some blocking and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the script is just doesn't do it for me.
Oh, it's all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also just the danger of these franchises getting picked up into a more mainstream thing. Friday the 13th was always kind of meant to be like, hey, let's make some money. And sort of had the idea, but like, not that Texas Chainsaw Massacre did not want to make money, but you know what I mean? Like it was this gritty, like this is what we've got to work with, all this stuff. And the 2 was still kind of like, we had way more money, but still Toby Hooper like doing his thing for some schlocky company. And this is like, no, we're New Line. So we want to be, we have to have this air of professionalism about it and all this stuff. And then they end up through corporate stuff, just fucking it all up and sort of what could have been. I am sort of curious about. I don't know that I would have loved the not cut to shit final version, but it would have been more coherent. That would have that going for it.
Well, let's honor our dead. Gina, played by Beth DePatie, bashed in the head with sledgehammer. Sarah, played by Tony Hudson, gutted by Leatherface with a chainsaw. Ryan, played by William Butler, hung upside down, head smashed by hammer. Mama Sawyer, played by Miriam Bird Nathanry, shot by Benny. Tinker, played by Joe Unger, died off screen after being shot by Benny. Tex, played by Viggo Mortensen, set on fire by Benny. Alfredo, played by Tom Everett, shot by Michelle. About the same body count, not terribly higher. And I do think that we forgot to make our estimation
we totally did.
The franchise on the first one. So we've got 9 Texas Chainsaw films, 9, 10, something like that. It's averaging about 5, 6, 7 per. So do you have a call for all of the franchise?
It's tough because I feel like some of the later ones, I've always want them. I was expecting them to be like more gory, but they're usually just more like moody.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to say, this trend's going to continue. I'm going to go an even 70.
Even 70? I'm going to, I agree that it does get a little bit more moody. I will say that I have seen the first Michael Bay one, and I can't remember at all the body count in that. But I'm just going to kind of assume that someone is just going to be like, hey, it's a chainsaw. You can mow down several people at once. Right. So I'm going to go higher just for the fun of it. I'm going to say 92.
92. All right.
All right. So 70 and 92. I don't know. I mean, I guess there is that one scene in the Netflix movie where he goes ham on everybody in the bus.
Yeah, but I bet he doesn't kill a lot of people. I don't remember, but I bet it's like just like, or maybe it's implied and he does. I don't remember.
And that's going to get hard for me in the count where it just like cuts to the outside of the bus and it's just like, did all those kids die? I don't know. Because
like technically you could argue that the bodies they found in the corpse pit, that was all. That was all they're doing as well.
There you go. Gee whiz.
But they're not on-screen deaths and like, you don't really know. Yeah, it's just kind of...
This is all pretty loosey-goosey as it is.
A point of order is that those bodies they found, they make it a whole point that they're the creamy breakdown of body fat. Eddie Poser, the guy that's point is when the fat's like jelly and it's nasty when those like corpse guys are,
yes.
pulling stuff out. It is just disgusting. It's like,
right.
I've had leftovers. Like I got Kahlua pork from the Hawaiian place. They're like, I didn't finish. I left in the fridge. The next day it was just like in a thing of fat. And imagine that, but it's a corpse.
That would fit with the vegetarian message of this film.
Yeah, well, let me name the place I got it from. I'm sure they'd appreciate this reference.
Right. Yeah. So, before we head out, I did want to, I've been meaning to do this for the last couple of weeks, but I wanted to shout out to Britta Hellquist and her coworker who evidently sit and sew and listen to our show together, which sounds so wholesome. So thank you so much for listening to us talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre while you're sewing. I don't know what you're sewing. Yeah. I mean, maybe you're sewing faces for all I know. I mean, if you're sewing a face, please show it to John and I.
Yeah, we'd love to see it.
Yeah. But no, thanks for listening. So next time we're going to be doing part 4. Of course, that's how these things go. Part 3, then part 4. So make sure you watch part 4 with us. Hoping to have another guest in the house next time. And until then, maybe leave us one of those 5-star reviews. 5 stars only, please. 5-star review. Help people find the show, especially if they like Texas Chainsaw or any of the old other franchises that we've done. We're hitting around 80 episodes, so I'm starting to think ahead towards, half a year away what we'll have to do for our 100th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, join us next week for part 4. And until then, you can find us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and Hurt a Bit Pod on YouTube, and email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. So we'll see you next week for part 4. Good night.
Good night.
This has been a Caretaker Press production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review over on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.